The fire had never gone out since the first dawn, when the ancestors received the flame from the Great Spirit. The sacred fire had burned at the heart of the village. It was tended day and night, fed with cedar and sweetgrass, watched by the firekeeper's family. Its glow was more than warmth. It was life itself, the pulse of the people. But that night, when the moon was high and the stars wheeled silently over the valley, the fire died. Not to a spark, not to an ember. Dead. The people gathered in the council circle, their faces pale in the cold moonlight, their breath rising in plumes. Fear spread like frost. Children clung to their mothers. Warriors who had never feared battle now looked at the blackened ashes with dread. For generations the fire had never failed, not even in the fiercest blizzard. Its death was a message. The elders spoke in hushed tones. Some said the firekeeper had broken a taboo. Others whispered that the spirits of the forest had grown angry. But all knew the prophecy. When the fire dies, the tribe shall walk into the cold. The words, spoken long ago by a dying shaman, now returned like a shadow. Taeon stood among the crowd, his hand tight around the haft of his spear. He was young, strong, yet restless. His heart often questioned the decisions of the elders, though he spoke his doubts only to the wind. Tonight, as he watched the ashes, his unease grew sharper. Taehan loved his people. He had hunted for them, bled for them, sung to the Great Spirit in their ceremonies. Yet something about this night felt different. A mistake had been made, he was certain of it. But whose? And why had the Great Spirit allowed the sacred flame to fall silent? His eyes drifted toward Elder Naya, the singer of ancient songs. Her wrinkled face was turned skyward, listening for voices in the stars. Her lips moved in prayer, yet her eyes glistened with sorrow. She, too, feared what was to come. Across the circle stood Makwa, a broad-shouldered warrior known for his strength and pride. Makwa's gaze burned, not with fear, but with anger. He muttered to those near him, "Weakness has done this. The fire died because the elders grow old and blind. We should lead ourselves, not bow to their trembling hands." The whisper spread. Division was already taking root. The council was called at once. The elders gathered in the longhouse, the tribe pressing close around them to hear. The wooden walls groaned with the weight of silence. Elder Naya lifted her staff. "Children of the valley," she began, her voice trembling like wind through reeds. "You know the prophecy. You know what it means. We are not abandoned, but we are being tested. The Great Spirit asks whether we remember respect, whether we walk in balance." Another elder, stern and gray-haired, spoke sharply. "The fire did not die of its own will. The ceremony was broken last night. One of the hunters returned late, and his blood touched the fire before purification was complete." The balance was disturbed. A murmur rippled through the people. The hunter bowed his head in shame. Makwa stepped forward, voice like thunder. "One mistake, and you would curse us all. Why not relight the fire and move on? Must we tremble before every superstition?" Gasps filled the room. No one spoke against the sacred fire so boldly. Elder Naya's staff struck the ground. "Do not speak so lightly, Makwa. The spirits do not forget. The fire is not a torch to be relit with dry wood. It is a covenant between us and the Great Spirit. Its silence is judgment." Taeon's chest tightened. He looked from the proud warrior to the sorrowful elder, torn between reason and reverence. He longed to ask questions, to demand clarity, yet he held his tongue. The discussion grew heated. Some argued that the tribe should remain, relight the fire with prayer, and beg forgiveness. Others insisted that the prophecy demanded action. They must leave the valley and walk into the winter forests, where trials awaited. Fear warred with pride. Tradition clashed with defiance. At last the eldest among them, White Antler, rose. His voice was cracked but steady. "The prophecy is clear. When the fire dies, we walk into the cold. To stay is to bring ruin. Already the signs are here. The elk avoid our valley, the river ice thickens too early, the wolves grow bold. We cannot deny the truth. A heavy silence fell. Mothers wept softly. Warriors clenched their jaws. Maqua's fists curled. So we surrender our valley, our homes, our ancestors' graves, all because of smoke and ash. Elder Naya's eyes flashed. It is not smoke and ash, but the breath of the Great Spirit. You would do well to remember humility. Maqua's glare swept the room, resting briefly on Taeon. For a heartbeat, Taeon thought he saw something dangerous in those eyes, ambition, sharper than hunger. The council ended with a decision that struck the tribe like a spear through the heart. They would obey the prophecy. At sunrise, they would leave the valley. They would carry what they could on their backs, their children on their shoulders, their songs on their lips. They would walk into the winter forests, vast and unforgiving, and seek the path the spirits demanded. The punishment was not merely exile, it was survival against impossible odds. The people filed out into the cold night. Some wailed, some prayed, some stood in stunned silence. Taeon lingered by the dead fire, staring at the blackened stones. He remembered the warmth it once gave, the way its smoke carried prayers to the sky. He bent and touched the ashes, cold against his skin. A whisper seemed to stir in the wind, though no one else heard it. Walk into the cold, or be consumed. He looked up at the mountains rising beyond the valley. Their peaks were white, their forests dark and endless. He wondered how many of his people would live to see spring. Behind him, Maqua muttered to his followers, "We follow fools into death. But remember my words, when the elders fail, strength will lead us." Taeon's heart beat harder. He sensed that the prophecy was only the beginning. And so, before the first light of dawn, the fate of the tribe was sealed. The valley would be left behind. The winter forests waited. The elders announced the punishment with solemn voices. Tomorrow, at sunrise, we walk into the cold. We are banished into the winter forests. The sun rose pale and cold over the valley, casting long blue shadows across the frost-hardened earth. Smoke no longer rose from the lodge fires. The sacred flame lay in silence, its ashes gray, its memory already heavy in the hearts of the people. With heavy steps, the tribe began their exile. The line of men, women, and children stretched along the riverbank, their breath hanging like mist. They carried woven packs filled with dried meat, furs, and sacred bundles. Some bore carved masks of their ancestors, unwilling to leave them behind. Others walked with their heads bowed, carrying little more than grief. The valley that had sheltered them for generations stood behind fields of tall grass, now stiff with frost. The river winding like a silver snake through the snow. They looked back often, knowing they might never return. For a people tied to land and spirit, leaving was more than a journey. It was a tearing away of soul from body. The winter forests loomed before them. Pines rose like spears against the gray sky, their branches heavy with snow. Shadows clung to the trunks, thick and restless. The wind threaded through the trees with a voice that was neither bird nor beast, but something older. The deeper they walked, the quieter it grew. No bird sang. No rabbit darted across the path. The snow muffled every step. Only the creak of laden sleds and the muffled cries of infants broke the silence. But in that silence, eyes glimmered. From ridges of snow and thickets of pine, wolves watched. Their yellow eyes shone in the gloom. They did not attack. They only followed silent shadows moving with the people. Some whispered that the wolves were the spirits of ancestors, judging. Others feared they were messengers of death, waiting for the weakest to fall. The people carried more than burdens of wood and food. They carried shame. Mothers whispered lullabies to their children, but their voices cracked with grief. Hunters walked with shoulders hunched, ashamed of the fire's death, ashamed of their weakness before the prophecy. Old women wept openly, remembering generations who had sung by the valley fire, now silenced forever. Even the earth seemed to mourn. The snow fell thick and wet, clinging to hair and furs, blinding the eyes. Branches snapped under the weight of ice, echoing like the groan of the world itself. To be banished was more than hunger and cold. It was a spiritual wound. They walked not only into winter, but into judgment. Taeon trudged near the front of the line, his spear strapped across his back, his breath burning in his chest. His legs were strong, yet his spirit felt heavier than the packs he carried. He looked at the elders, walking ahead with staffs in hand, their steps slow but steady. Their faces were unreadable, carved from stone. Were they leading the people into wisdom, more into death? Behind him came the low murmur of voices, whispers like the rustle of dry leaves. Makwa, the broad-shouldered warrior, walked with pride, his head unbowed, his followers close behind him. His words carried through the stillness, meant to be heard. "They call this wisdom," he muttered, his tone sharp as flint. "But what is wisdom if it drives us from our homes like beaten dogs? We should have relit the fire, prayed louder, hunted harder, but no, our elders choose exile, and we march to death." A few men grunted in agreement. Fear made them eager for strong voices. Makwa continued, his breath curling in the air. "The Great Spirit does not demand weakness. He demands strength. The fire died because we allowed it. Not because of prophecy, not because of spirits, because we are led by those too old to see truth. One day soon, new leaders must rise." Taeon's jaw tightened. He glanced back, meeting Makwa's eyes. For a moment the cold between them seemed sharper than the winter wind. Makwa's stare held defiance and something more dangerous, ambition. The march stretched into dusk. Snow deepened, drifts swallowing their legs. Children cried with exhaustion, and elders stumbled. They set up a camp among the pines, building small fires with trembling hands. Sparks rose into the night, but gave little warmth. Taeon sat near the edge of camp, staring into the forest. The silence pressed against his ears. He could feel the weight of unseen eyes. Then he heard it. A call. Low, harsh, unnatural. From a branch above, a raven stared down at him. Its feathers gleamed blacker than night, its eyes sharp as obsidian. But there was something wrong in those eyes, something too clever, too knowing. It tilted its head, watching him. Then it gave a croak that sounded almost like a laugh. Others noticed. Children pointed. Elders frowned. Elder Naya whispered, "The raven is no ordinary bird. It is the trickster's shadow. To follow us is to mock us." Makwa smirked from the firelight. "Or perhaps it comes as a guide, showing us which fools will freeze first." His laughter was low, but others joined uneasily. The raven did not fly away. It remained, silent now, eyes burning in the dark. Taeon felt a chill creep through his bones, colder than snow. He remembered the prophecy, remembered the whisper he had heard by the dead fire. Walk into the cold, or be consumed. And now, as the raven watched, he wondered, were they being tested or were they being hunted? As the fires dimmed and the tribe drifted into uneasy sleep, the raven spread its wings and let out a human-like sound, a single word echoing through the trees, cold. The winter forests grew colder with each passing night. The snow thickened, blanketing the world in white silence. But silence was not always empty. At times, it breathed. At times, it spoke. The people began to hear it, while huddled around weak fires. They whispered of voices drifting between the treesicos that rose and faded like sighs of the ancestors. Some claimed the voices spoke warnings. Others believed they were the cries of those who had once been banished, lost forever in the woods. Still others said madness was seeping into the tribe, born from hunger and shame. Children clung to their mothers' robes. Hunters tightened their grips on spears, though there was nothing to strike at but shadows. Elder Naya sat near the flames, her staff planted firmly in the snow, her gaze never leaving the forest. Her long braids, white as bone, gleamed in the firelight. She was keeper of the songs, bearer of stories, the voice of tradition. One night, as the whispers rose again among the trees, she spoke with solemn weight. These are not the sounds of madness. They are the voices of the winter forest. The spirits are testing us. They wish to see if we remember respect. If we forget, the forest itself will devour us. Her words carried power. Yet for every head bowed in reverence, there was another that lifted with doubt. Taeon listened, heart heavy with unease. That night, when sleep finally took him, his spirit slipped into a vision. He stood in a meadow of endless snow beneath a sky of burning stars. A white elk emerged from the mist, its antlers vast and glimmering, as if woven from moonlight. Its eyes met his, and he felt both peace and urgency. The elk bowed its head, motioning him forward, but from behind, shadows surged, dark figures with twisted faces, their cries sharp and hollow. They lunged for him, their claws dragging across the snow. Taeon reached for the elk, desperate to follow its path. But the shadows grew faster, snarling. Pulling him down into the white abyss, he woke with a gasp, his body shivering despite the fire beside him. Sweat froze on his brow. The elk's gaze burned in his memory. He knew it was not just a dream. It was a vision, a message from the spirit world. The next day, as snow fell thick around the camp, Taeon spoke softly to Elder Naya. "I saw a white elk," he said. "It guided me, but shadows followed, hungering for me." Her eyes grew wide, then softened with recognition. The white elk is a spirit guide, the keeper of truth. Few are chosen to see it. The shadows are warnings, forces of greed and betrayal that hunt those who forget balance. Your path will not be easy, Taeon. He bowed his head, uncertain of his strength. But not all listened to Naya's counsel. At the edge of camp, Makwa gathered men around him, his voice low and sharp. "Spirits, visions, old tales to keep us obedient. What we need is food, fire, strength. The elders lead us into weakness. I say we take what we need. The forest belongs to those with the courage to claim it." His words stirred restless hearts. Many were tired of hunger, tired of fear. Strength sounded more comforting than waiting on invisible spirits. The rift deepened. That night, as the tribe lay under the watch of dim fires, the raven returned. It perched on a branch above the camp, feathers glistening black as oil. Its eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the flames. It tilted its head, opened its beak, and this time the sound that came was no ordinary caw. It was a word, a human word: hunger. The people froze in silence, their blood running cold. By the third week in the winter forests, hunger gnawed at every belly. The hunters returned empty-handed more often than not. Tracks disappeared into endless snow, or led to thin, starving creatures not worth the risk of arrows. Fish beneath the frozen river could not be reached. Children cried through the nights, their bodies frail, their mothers hollow-eyed. The wolves still followed, silent, patient. Their glowing eyes hovered at the edge of firelight, watching as if they waited for weakness. At the council fire, voices cracked with desperation. "We cannot go on like this," said one mother, clutching her child. "The forest gives us nothing. Perhaps we are meant to die here." Elder Naya shook her head firmly. "The spirits test us. We must endure. We must keep respect in our hearts. Hunger is a trial, not a curse." But Makwa's voice cut across hers. His words were edged with fury, like a blade sharpened too long. "Respect will not fill empty bellies. Tradition will not keep our children alive. If the spirits want us to starve, then I spit upon their trial. There is game here, we only need the courage to take it." The next morning Makwa proved his words. From the tree line came the sound of branches breaking. The hunters returned, their faces pale, their steps hurried. Behind them walked a magnificent figure, the white elk. Its coat shimmered in the gray light, unblemished by snow. Its antlers spread wide as the branches of a great tree. It moved with a grace that was not of this world. Gasps rose from the tribe. Children pressed forward in awe. Elder Naya fell to her knees, chanting a prayer. "The elk has come as a guide," she whispered. "It is a gift of vision, not of flesh. To harm it is to strike at the spirits themselves." But Makwa stepped forward, spear in hand, eyes alight with hunger and pride. "Guide? No, it has come because the spirits grow fat while we starve. I will take what they will not give. Its meat will feed us, and its hide will warm us. Strength demands it." Tayan's heart pounded. He saw his vision flash before him, the elk, the shadows, the danger of betrayal. He stepped forward. "Makwa, stop. This is no prey. This is the very spirit that walks with us. To kill it is to curse us all." Makwa sneered. "You speak like an elder already, afraid of your own shadow. But I am not afraid." He raised his spear. The tribe cried out. Some begged him to stop, others urged him on. Hunger and reverence clashed in desperate voices. Children wept, torn between awe and the ache in their bellies. Elder Naya's voice rang sharp as a hawk's cry. "Do not strike, Makwa. The forest watches. The spirits watch. This elk is not flesh, but a covenant." But Makwa's hand did not tremble. He hurled his spear. The weapon pierced the elk's white coat. Blood spilled across the snow red as fire, staining purity with violence. The elk staggered, let out a low, mournful cry, then collapsed. The forest grew silent, too silent. The wind stilled. Even the wolves froze, their eyes wide. Snowflakes seemed to hang motionless in the air. Then, slowly, the trees groaned. The sky darkened, clouds rushing in from nowhere. The forest itself seemed to recoil. The people fell to their knees, wailing. Tayan gripped the ground, tears burning in his eyes. He felt the spirit of the elk cry out, not in death, but in transformation, its presence pressing into his heart. That night, the storm came. Snow whipped across the camp, tearing down shelters, burying fires, howling like 1,000 voices of grief. Some said they heard words in the wind. "Balance is broken. Balance is broken." Tayan prayed into the storm, clutching the vision of the elk. Makwa stood tall, his face lit with grim triumph as he divided the elk's flesh. For some, the meat was salvation. For others, it was poison of the spirit. As lightning cracked across the sky, the raven returned, landing on the carcass of the elk. It looked at Makwa with eyes glowing red and whispered a second human word, "Mine." The snow fell heavier that moon, blanketing the winter forest in silence. Each flake drifted down like a warning from the sky, covering the footprints of the banished tribe, as though the earth itself wished to erase their passage. Food had become a shadow. The hunters returned each night with little more than hollow eyes and empty hands. Rabbits vanished before arrows could fly. The deer melted into the thickets as if swallowed by the spirits, and even fish beneath the frozen river seemed beyond reach. The forest gave nothing. Whispers rose around the dwindling fires. "Are we cursed? Have the spirits turned their faces away?" Children cried from hunger, and their mothers sang soft laments to quiet them. Every day, the tribe felt the weight of exile pressing down. Hunger gnawed not only at the belly, but at the heart. At night, the wolves came. Their eyes glowed from the ridges, silent, patient. They never attacked. They circled, watching, as though measuring the tribe's courage. Some whispered they were guardians of the winter forest, messengers of the balance. Others muttered that they were waiting for weakness, waiting for death. Tayan saw them most clearly. He felt the burning of their gaze, like judgment from the unseen world. In his dreams, he heard their howls twine with voices of the ancestors warning, reminding, calling him toward something he did not yet understand. It was during one of these desperate nights that Makwa rose, his breath steaming, his voice sharp enough to cut through the crackling of frozen wood. "We starve because we cling to old fears," he said, his eyes flashing like a spark in the darkness. "This forest is filled with prey, yet we return empty. Why? Because we bow to taboos that bind us like chains." He raised his hand toward the dark trees. "There is an elk. You have seen it. Tall as two men, white as the moonlight. We know it walks near our camp, yet we let it pass, because the elders say it is sacred." Gasps rippled through the people. To speak so openly of the white elk was dangerous, for it was believed to be a spirit guide, a messenger from the Great Spirit himself. Makwa's voice grew louder. "What good are messengers when children die with hollow bellies? What good is a spirit guide when we are cast out to freeze? I say, the elk is flesh and blood, and flesh fills the stomach." Elder Naya struggled to her feet, leaning on her carved staff. Though age bent her back, her voice carried the weight of rivers and mountains. "Makwa," she said, "your hunger blinds you. The elk you speak of is not meat to be taken. It is the spirit's gift, a guide in the storm. If you raise your spear against it, you raise your hand against the Great Spirit himself." She looked to the people, her eyes glowing in the firelight. "The winter forest is not only trees and snow. It is alive. It watches. It tests. The elk walks to remind us of who we are. To slay it is to slay the last hope we carry." Some nodded, murmuring prayers, but others, hollow-eyed and gaunt, looked at Makwa with desperation. Hunger is a sharp blade, and it cut through faith. Taeon felt the pull of both voices, Makwa's fire and Naya's warning. He remembered his dream of the elk, its white form luminous, its breath like smoke rising to the stars. Behind it, shadows chased. Was it a guide to salvation or a lure into ruin? He clenched his fists. His stomach ached, but a deeper ache gnawed at him, the fear of making the wrong choice. He wanted to believe in the spirits, but each night he saw the children's ribs pressing through their skin. He heard their weak cries, and he wondered if faith alone could fill an empty belly. The next day, the tribe walked further into the pines, snow up to their knees. And there, as if drawn from the dream itself, the white elk appeared. It stood on a ridge, majestic antlers crowned with frost. Its coat shimmered against the gloom of the forest, glowing faintly as though lit from within. For a moment, all the people fell silent, breath held. The elk's eyes looked down upon them not with fear, but with knowing. Some dropped to their knees, whispering prayers. Others reached for their bows in secret. Makwa stepped forward, spear in hand. His voice broke the silence. "Here, the spirits mock us with this creature while our children suffer. No more. Tonight, we eat." Elder Naya cried out, raising her staff. "Do not strike, Makwa. To spill this blood is to doom us all." But Makwa's eyes burned with defiance. He lifted his spear, muscles coiling, the point glinting like ice in the pale light. The elk did not move. It only breathed, watching calm as the forest itself. Taeon's heart thundered in his chest. The tribe's fate hung on the next heartbeat, and then Makwa lunged. The spear rose toward the sacred white elk, and the forest itself seemed to hold its breath. The spear flew. The sound of its striking was sharp as thunder, shattering the silence of the winter forest. The white elk staggered, its luminous body folding into the snow. Its eyes, once shining with calm wisdom, dimmed like stars fading at dawn. Blood spread across the snow, vivid and terrible, a wound not only to the earth, but to the spirit of the people. The forest trembled. The wind howled as though it carried the elk's final cry. Pines bent and cracked, shaken by unseen hands. Then came silence, unnatural, suffocating, alive with wrath. Every bird vanished into shadow, and even the wolves stopped their howls. It was as if the world itself recoiled. Snow began to fall with sudden violence. a storm whipping around the tribe as though drawn from the elk's final breath. The flakes were heavy, blinding, choking. Children clung to their mothers. Hunters shielded their faces. The fire sputtered in the storm's fury, nearly extinguished. Elder Naya fell to her knees, striking her staff into the frozen ground. Her voice rose above the gale. "You have broken the balance. You have cut the thread between us and the Great Spirit." But Makwa only pulled his spear from the elk's body, his face grim and triumphant. He raised the bloodied point high. "Do you not see? The spirits do not feed us. I do. The people live because I have no fear." Some, hollow with hunger, cheered him. Others turned away, tears freezing on their cheeks. Tyan stood apart, his heart pounding with grief. He walked to the fallen elk, kneeling beside its body. Snowflakes melted against its white fur, streaked with crimson. The elk's breath was faint now, but its eyes turned to him deep, endless, knowing. He pressed his forehead to its side and whispered a prayer. "Great Spirit, forgive us. Forgive our blindness, our weakness, our hunger. Carry this spirit to the sky, so its light does not fade." As he spoke, a strange warmth filled his chest, cutting through the cold. In that moment, he felt the elk's spirit enter him like a flicker of fire kindled deep within. Its voice whispered in his mind, "Walk the path of truth, though shadows chase you. Do not let the blood blind your eyes." When he lifted his head, the elk's body was still, but its presence lingered in his soul. That night, the people gathered. The carcass of the elk was butchered, its meat shared in trembling hands. Hunger drove them to eat, though many wept as they did. Makwa's followers praised him. "You saved us. You gave us strength. You are the leader now." Others sat in silence, refusing to touch the meat, mourning the sacred bond broken. Elder Naya's voice cracked as she warned, "You may fill your stomachs, but you have emptied your spirits. The forest watches. The balance is broken, and the price will come." Makwa glared at her. "The price is hunger, and I have paid it with action. No spirit feeds a child, only courage." The camp divided that night, those who stood by Makwa, their bellies full, but their hearts heavy, and those who stayed near Naya and Tyan, whispering prayers to the fallen elk. Tyan slept with unease. In his dream, he stood in a forest of endless white. The elk appeared before him, glowing brighter than the moon, its antlers crowned with fire. "You carry my blood now," it said, its voice like wind through the pines. "Protect the path of balance, even if others walk in shadow." Behind the elk, he saw shapes, moving wolves, ravens, shadows twisting like smoke. They circled Makwa's figure, who stood holding his bloodied spear. The elk's eyes burned into Tyan's soul. The raven waits. When its fire burns red, the true trial begins. Tyan awoke with his breath sharp, sweat cold upon his brow. The storm outside had passed, but the air was heavy, charged with unseen power. He looked around at the tribe, divided and weary, some sleeping with full stomachs, others restless with sorrow. His thoughts echoed like a question in the silence. What would you have done? Would you have followed the sacred law and let the children starve? Or would you have broken it, staining the snow with blood to survive? The fire popped, as though demanding an answer no one dared to give. That night, while Makwa sat apart with his warriors, feeding the fire with great pride, a shadow dropped into their circle. A raven landed in the snow, its feathers blacker than the night sky. At first Makwa laughed. Even the birds come to honor the feast. But then the raven did not move. It stared directly into the flames, its head cocked unnaturally. The firelight reflected in its eyes until, suddenly, the reflection burned crimson. The raven's eyes glowed red, gasps rippled through Makwa's men. The bird did not caw. It only stared, its gaze burning like coals, as though it carried the wrath of something far greater. Makwa's laughter faltered. For the first time, his hand trembled on his spear. The raven stood in the firelight, its eyes glowing red, as though the winter forest itself had come to claim Makwa's soul. The fire had dwindled to embers, flickering weakly under a sky heavy with snow clouds. The raven remained. It perched on a broken branch above Makwa's head, its black feathers ruffled by the wind, its eyes glowing a crimson fire. When Makwa met its gaze, a strange whisper threaded into his mind, low and coaxing. The spirits banished you because they fear your strength. They envy your courage. They hide the path from the weak. Makwa shivered, but it was not fear, only hunger and ambition, sharpened to a blade. The whispers twisted through his thoughts, promising power beyond hunger, beyond winter, beyond the law of the elders. The raven hopped closer. Its claws clicked on the branch. Lead them, bend them, take what is yours. The forest belongs to those who claim it. Makwa smiled. The cold and the storm no longer mattered. In the raven's voice, he heard permission to seize the forest itself. The tribe moved cautiously through the winter forest, snow thick as a river of white, but even the strongest hearts began to falter. First, it was a child. She wandered from the fire one night, drawn by a voice that called her name in the wind. When her mother ran, she found only the frozen snow, disturbed and hollow. Then a hunter disappeared, returning never. His tracks ended abruptly at the base of a pine, and the wolves watched silently from the shadows. Whispers ran through the tribe. The forest takes those who break the path, or those who follow the wrong guide. Even the bravest faltered. Hunger and fear combined with the ravens, whispering, and the people began to question everything. The elders, the spirits, even each other. Taeon's nights were restless. The elk came again in his dreams, its white coat smeared with blood. But now, as he gazed upon it, the elk's blood rose and turned to stars, drifting into the sky like scattered light. Balance must be kept, it said, its voice echoing like wind through the pines. Do not let them fall into shadow. You are the flame yet alive. He awoke with snow in his hair, the icy wind cutting through his furs. The vision left a burning weight in his chest. He understood that the elk's spirit had not perished, had transformed into guidance, urging him to resist both hunger and betrayal, to hold to the path of balance. That morning Taeon found Elder Naya beside a dying fire, chanting softly. She looked up, her eyes wide and ancient, reflecting the frost. The winter forest devours those who betray balance, she said. Her voice was sharp, like ice breaking. I have told this story before, but it bears repeating now. Long ago, a tribe entered these woods with pride in their hearts. They broke taboos, hunted sacred beasts, and ignored the warnings of the spirits. The forest scattered them. Only shadows remained, their names lost to the wind. Taeon shivered. He thought of the missing child, the vanished hunter, and the crimson-eyed raven perched silently above Makwa. The raven is no ordinary bird, she continued. It is a herald. It teaches the path of power through fear, but those who listen too closely are swallowed by the storm, body and soul. Taeon's eyes flicked to Makwa, laughing quietly as he examined his spear, as if daring the forest itself to strike. The wind grew cold, carrying the taste of ice and shadow. Dark clouds gathered overhead, thick and fast. Taeon felt the forest itself breathe an unseen, immense pulse that made the pines groan like trapped spirits. The snow began to whip violently, cutting through firs and hiding paths. Visibility dropped to near nothing. Branches broke and fell under the weight of ice. The tribe shouted, searching for each other, but voices were swallowed immediately by the storm. Makwa raised his head, shouting over the roar. Move, push forward, the weak fall behind. But even his followers faltered, some crying, some clutching children, some slipping into the deep drifts of snow and disappearing. Taeon struggled to keep pace. His legs ached, his lungs burned. The wind tore at his vision. Then a branch snapped nearby, and he turned, expecting Makwa or worse. Instead, He saw nothing. The world had narrowed to white. Snow piled over his boots. He felt a sudden, terrifying sense of emptiness. A shadow passed over him, black as night, and he knew the raven was near. Its red eyes flashed in the storm, a warning and a curse both. Then the blizzard tore him from his companions. He fell into a hollow in the ice, hidden by drifts. The wind howled above him, drowning out all sound. He was buried, trapped, alone. The forest waited. The storm raged, and the raven's glowing eyes lingered above, silent now, but far from gone. Taion awoke beneath ice and snow, alone in the winter forest. While the storm howled, and the raven's eyes glowed red above him, watching, waiting. The storm had buried the winter forest in white silence. Snowdrift swallowed Taion's legs. His breath came in shallow, icy gasps, and every step felt like wading through eternity. Hunger and cold gnawed at him, and despair pressed like stone upon his chest. But he moved forward, compelled by something deeper, whispered threading through the wind. A glow glimpsed through the whiteout. It was the elk spirit. Its luminous form shimmered before him, barely visible through the swirl of snow. The antlers glowed faintly, casting light over the drifts, guiding him, urging him not to falter. "Follow," the elk whispered, voice like wind through frozen pines. "Your path is not yet ended. Balance awaits those who endure." Taion stumbled over roots and frozen stones until he came to a cliffside, hidden by hanging pines. There, the elk stopped. Beneath the snow, a narrow opening revealed itself, glowing with a soft, blue light. He stepped inside cautiously. The cave walls glimmered like frost-covered crystal, radiating warmth and power despite the cold. Stalactites hung like frozen spears, catching the faint glow, and the floor sparkled as if dusted with stars. Within the cave, the air hummed with life. Taion could feel the presence of ancestors, of the spirits of those who had walked this forest before him. "Welcome, Seeker," came a voice that was many voices. The shapes of figures appeared in the ice, their faces familiar yet ethereal elders, hunters, mothers long gone. They circled him, reminding him of lessons long forgotten. "Humility is strength," one whispered. "Courage is tested not by war, but by patience," said another. "Balance is the thread that binds all life, break it, and all falls." The cave shifted. Shadows rose from the walls, forming visions drawn from Taion's fears. He saw himself surrounded by hungry children, their eyes accusing, their voices trembling. The echoes of Makwa's laughter filled the chamber. Hunger gnawed at him, the temptation to take power by force thrumming through his veins. Then the floor became ice, and he slipped into visions of betrayal, his friends, elders, even Naya, turning against him, mocking his indecision. Shadows whispered that the spirits had abandoned him, that survival required striking first, acting without respect, taking what was forbidden. Each illusion was more real than the last. Taion faltered, knees trembling, but he remembered the elk. Its glow pierced the darkness, steady and true. "Courage is not absence of fear," it said. "Courage is acting despite it. Humility is not weakness. It is the anchor of strength." He took a deep breath. Each step through the illusions became firmer. The visions of hunger, betrayal, and shadows dissolved like mist, leaving clarity in their wake. At the cave's heart, a pedestal of ice rose. Upon it, a single white feather, shimmering with an inner light. The elk lowered its head, antlers brushing the walls, and spoke once more. "Take this. It is a gift of wisdom and leadership. Carry it into the world, and it will remind you of balance, of humility, of courage. Those who wield power without it will be consumed." Taion approached reverently, his fingers brushing the feather. Instantly, warmth spread through his chest. He felt the spirits of the forest, the voices of ancestors, and the guidance of the elk coalesce within him. He stood taller, shoulders squared. The storm outside no longer seemed as insurmountable. The path forward, though dangerous, felt right. Balance is your shield. Wisdom is your spear. Go, and lead not with fear, but with honor. The elk faded into the crystalline walls, leaving Taeon alone with the feather's glow. Hours later, Taeon crawled from the cave, snow swirling around him like living spirits. The storm had lessened, though the forest still groaned and moaned with winter's power. He brushed snow from his furs and looked ahead, heart pounding. Then he saw it. Makwa was standing atop a drift, taller than any man, wearing a cloak dyed in blood. Around him, the tribe knelt, eyes lowered, some out of fear, others out of hunger, all caught in his dark aura of power. Makwa's spear gleamed in the dim light, and behind him, the crimson-eyed raven perched on a branch, watching, whispering, guiding. The sight struck Taeon like a blow. His stomach churned. His heart raced. The path forward would not only test his courage, but all he had learned in the cave: wisdom, balance, and the courage to act without succumbing to fear or anger. The wind carried Makwa's laughter across the drifts, a sound that promised darkness, tyranny, and the corruption of the forest's fragile order. Taeon clutched the sacred feather, feeling its warmth, feeling the elk spirit in his chest. He knew what he must do, but the forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Taeon stepped into the clearing, snow swirling at his feet, and saw Makwa crowned in blood. The tribe kneeling before him and the raven's red eyes staring straight into his soul. The clearing lay under a gray, storm-heavy sky. Snow swirled around the tribe like restless spirits, whipped by winds that seemed alive with anger. Makwa stood at its center, taller than any man should be. His cloak darkened with dried blood, eyes glowing like embers caught in a storm. The raven perched above him, its red gaze igniting the wind around them, whispering in voices only Makwa could hear. He was no longer simply a man. He had become a conduit of chaos, empowered by the raven's trickery. The kneeling tribe watched in fearful silence, the weight of betrayal heavy on their hearts. Taeon stepped into the snow, the sacred feather clutched in his fist, its glow faint against the storm. "Makwa," he called, voice cutting across the wind. "This is not the path of our people. The spirits did not send you here to kill, to conquer, to destroy. Return to the sacred ways." Makwa laughed, a sound sharp and twisted like cracking ice. "Sacred ways. The spirits abandoned you, weakling. Only power survives. Only strength matters. Kneel, or perish, like the rest." The tribe stirred, divided between fear and hope, some too weak to act, others gripping spears with trembling hands. Taeon's heart pounded. He felt the elk spirit surge within him, a steady warmth of guidance and clarity. He raised his hand and whispered a prayer, calling on the spirits, the ancestors, the hidden forces of the winter forest. The wind shifted, carrying a low growl. From the tree line emerged the wolves, their fur bristling, eyes bright and fierce. They circled Makwa's followers, snapping and lunging, disrupting the dark momentum he had gathered. The tribe, inspired by courage and the wolf pack's fury, rose. Spears and bows came alive in their hands. Snow became a storm of movement, footfalls, howls, and cries echoing across the white expanse. Makwa's strength was terrifying. With the raven's whispers guiding him, he moved with unnatural speed, striking at warriors, dodging arrows, and commanding fear as if it were armor. His glowing eyes cut through the blizzard like fire in the snow. Taeon, in contrast, moved with clarity. The elk spirit guided each step, each parry and thrust. He felt the wind, the cold, the snow, the echoes of ancestors, all flowing through him. Each movement was not brute force, but harmony, a dance between spirit and body. Makwa roared, swinging a spear that seemed to cleave the very air. Taeon dodged, pivoted, and struck not to kill, but to unbalance, to awaken the memory of honor in his foe. The wolves leaped into the fray, teeth and claws tearing at Makwa's forces. Some men fled, some fell, their fear overpowering loyalty. The tribe, emboldened by the animals and Tyone's presence, pressed forward with courage not born of hunger or power, but of unity with the forest itself. Above, the crimson-eyed raven cawed, shrieking in a voice that split the wind. Its wings beat with a force that bent the snow and ice around it, stirring shadows that writhed and twisted in the blizzard. Tyone's heart clenched. He could feel the raven's power, the corruption and trickery it had sown. Every strike, every move Makwa made, was guided by it. He needed to act, to sever the darkness before it consumed everything. Tyon leaped forward, moving faster than his own fear, guided by the elk's spirit. He raised his arm, the sacred feather glowing like a blade of light in his fist, and prepared to strike Makwa. Makwa snarled, eyes blazing, and the raven shrieked in fury, a sound that shook the snow like thunder. Then, impossibly, it split. Countless black wings erupted from its body, filling the sky above the clearing. They swirled, blurring with the snowstorm, black against white, a living shadow that carried malice and power. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Even the wolves froze, mid-leap ears flicking toward the sky. Tyon's gaze met Makwa's human, corrupted, but still there. The moment of truth had come. As Tyon struck toward Makwa, the raven's wings split across the storm, and the winter forest itself seemed to rise against them, both chaos and spirit colliding in a single heartbeat. The blizzard had subsided, leaving the winter forest blanketed in silence. The storm's rage faded, replaced by a hush that pressed against the hearts of the survivors. The snow lay undisturbed, pure and cold, as though the forest itself had exhaled and waited. Makwa was gone. Some claimed they saw him swallowed by the storm, dragged into the depths of the snowdrifts. Others whispered that the forest had claimed him, erasing his name from memory, leaving no trace but the bitter taste of his ambition. The crimson-eyed raven had scattered with the storm, wings disappearing into the gray sky, but its final caw lingered in the wind, a warning carried to all who listened. Tricksters never die, they return when forgotten. The people stirred, weary and broken, yet alive. Children huddled with mothers, hunters straightened aching backs, and elders whispered thanks to the unseen spirits of the forest. They looked to Tyon, standing among them, the sacred feather clutched in his hand, glowing faintly in the snow. He lowered his gaze, humility etched into his stance. He had survived, yes, but the weight of leadership and the sorrow of those lost pressed heavily upon him. Still, he understood the path forward. Courage alone could not guide them, wisdom and balance must lead. The tribe approached slowly, some still trembling from fear, others with eyes alight with newfound respect. They knelt before him not in fear, but in trust. The mantle of leadership had passed, and Tyon accepted it with reverence. Tyon raised his arms, calling the tribe to gather in a clearing untouched by the battle's chaos. He struck a flint, and though the wind was fierce, a small flame ignited a spark that would become the sacred fire. The people formed a circle, hands joined, hearts united. Tyon began to sing. The song rose soft at first, trembling through the cold, carrying prayers to the Great Spirit, the ancestors, and the elk spirit who had guided him. The elders joined in, their voices weaving through the wind. Hunters, children, mothers, and fathers lifted their own chants. The song filled the forest, shaking the branches of the pines, melting frost from the air, and awakening the dormant spirits around them. Snowflakes glimmered in the firelight, as though dancing to the rhythm of their unity. Wolves watched from the shadows, now allies, their howls harmonizing with the voices of the tribe. Balance returned slowly, like a river filling its banks. The winter forest, once a place of fear and punishment, now breathed with life and approval. Tyon knelt before the space where the white elk had fallen, placing the sacred feather atop the snow. he whispered a prayer. Spirit of the elk, guide of our hearts, forgive the trespasses of our hunger and fear. Your sacrifice is not forgotten. We honor your wisdom, your courage, your guidance. Lead us, always, in balance and truth. The wind stirred gently, lifting the feather into the air before settling it softly back on the snow. A shimmer of white light pulsed faintly around it, as if the elk's spirit itself had blessed the act. The tribe watched, awestruck, feeling the presence of the spirit envelop them. They knew that the elk had not died, it had transformed into guidance, a light for generations to follow. Wounds were tended, fires rebuilt, and the tribe prepared for the first true night of peace in the winter forest. Children laughed softly as mothers fed them, hunters sharpened their tools, and the elders shared wisdom drawn from the trials endured. Taeon walked among them, speaking quietly, listening, offering counsel tempered by the lessons of the forest and the visions of the elk. He was a leader forged not only in courage, but in humility, patience, and understanding the qualities the winter forest had demanded and tested. They would remain vigilant, aware that the trickster never truly dies, that the balance of the forest could shift again if ignored. But for now, harmony reigned, fragile, yet real, like the first tender flame of a sacred fire in the cold snow. As night fell, Taehan gathered the tribe near the ashes of the old campfire. He struck a flint once more, and then without wind, without effort, the sacred fire burst to life on its own. Its flames glowed warm and steady, golden against the pale snow, as though the spirits themselves had returned to bless them. Eyes widened, mouths parted in awe. Taeon's heart lifted, yet he knew the lesson was far from over. The fire was a symbol. Survival alone was not enough. Respect, balance, and wisdom were eternal trials. The sacred fire relit itself in the snow, glowing with warmth, as the winter forest whispered of old spirits, new beginnings, and the watchful eyes of the unseen. Years passed, seasons changed, as relentless as the flow of rivers, yet the winter forest remained ancient and watchful. Its pines had grown taller, its snowbanks deeper, and its silence heavier, but no longer a curse. The tribe survived, scarred by hunger, betrayal, and the shadow of Mekwa's ambition. They had endured. They walked the forest with respect now, guided by the wisdom of the elk and the lessons of the storm. Each step was measured, each hunt careful, each fire tended not only for warmth, but for the spirits of those who had come before. Children ran through the snow, laughter ringing through the pines, unafraid. Hunters moved with quiet reverence, listening for whispers in the wind, recognizing the signs of the spirits. Even the wolves, once harbingers of danger, now shared the forest as guardians of balance. Generations later, around firelight and in the shelter of longhouses, elders told the story. They spoke of Mekwa, whose pride had blinded him, of hunger that had tested their hearts, of the white elk, whose spirit guided the tribe from the edge of ruin, and of the raven, whose whispers reminded all that tricksters never truly die. Remember, they said to wide-eyed children, the forest remembers all things. Those who forget respect are forgotten by the earth. Stories were sung, songs passed down with drumbeats and soft chants, each note carrying the weight of past mistakes and the light of survival. The tribe did not fear the winter forest anymore. They honored it. They knew it held lessons for those who listened. Taeon, older now, walked among his people, teaching, guiding, and remembering. He often paused in the forest, feeling the elk spirit brush against him in the wind. He no longer needed to see it. The presence was unmistakable, a whisper of wisdom in every rustling pine and falling snowflake. The elk's guidance had transformed him, had shaped the tribe into something stronger, wiser, more attuned to the balance of the world. He would tell the young ones, power without respect is fleeting, courage without balance is hollow, and the spirits see all. The forest remembers everything. Those who walk with honor are never lost. Those who walk in arrogance are erased, not from the stories of men, but from the earth itself. One cold evening, a small child tugged on the elder's robe. "Tell me about the white elk," the child asked, eyes wide and curious, shimmering with innocence. The elder smiled, gaze drifting toward the moonlit forest. Snowflakes settled softly on their furs. "It still walks among us," the elder said softly, unseen, yet never gone. "Its hooves touch the snow, its antlers catch the light of the spirits, guiding those who remember balance, humility, and courage. Its presence is everywhere, in every breath of wind, every shimmer of snow, every quiet heart that listens." The child nodded solemnly, sensing a truth deeper than words. The tribe built new homes on the edge of the winter forest, their lives entwined with the land. Each winter, they rekindled the sacred fire, not as punishment, but as remembrance. Songs of the white elk, of Taon's courage, and of the lessons from the storm were sung, ensuring the history endured. Elder Naya's wisdom was carved into memory and heart. Respect the sacred. Listen to the spirits. Guard the balance. Walk with courage, and do not fall to whispers of power that lead to destruction. The forest itself seemed to nod in approval. Pines swayed gently, the snow sparkled with quiet light, and the wind carried a soft harmony, as though affirming that the tribe had learned the lessons the winter forest had demanded. Taon often paused in the stillness, recalling Makwa's fall, the blizzard, the raven's shriek, and the trials of hunger and fear. He understood now. The forest did not punish for cruelty or ambition it tested. It revealed the hearts of those who walked within it. The tribe had emerged not just alive, but transformed. Wisdom had been forged in the fire of suffering. Courage had been tempered by humility. Balance had returned, woven into the very rhythm of life. Would you walk into the winter forests with courage, or would you lose yourself to the raven's whispers? The snow glimmered as the sacred fire flickered in the distance. A soft wind carried whispers of the elk spirit through the pines, reminding all that some lessons are eternal, and some spirits never leave, guiding those who dare to listen.